could also I could also reach out to Kim.
Welcome, everyone.
Morning.
We're just letting people in at this point. Lots of people today, yay. Okay. Welcome. Welcome, everyone. I'm Jen Severance. I am a business development manager at First Children's Finance and also still working a little bit at Let's Grow Kids. Sherry is facilitating the meeting, but she is running over a few minutes. As you can probably guess, they're very busy at Let's Grow Kids right now. So I thought I would get us started by welcoming everybody. And if you can introduce yourself through the chat, that would be great. We have a great agenda today. We're going to start with some folks from CIS, Children's Integrated Services, and we're going to do a panel discussion with them. And then from about the beginning till about 10:50, and then we're going to welcome Joanna Vasey and she's going to do some STARS updates and some updates around the SPARQS program. So thank you for introducing yourselves in the chat. And I think we're going to get started. I'm going to bet there's still a lot of people joining, so.
We'll give folks a minute.
Yeah.
Introduce yourself.
And if anybody has any updates they want to share, from last month, maybe we talked about First Children's Finance, and we talked about PDG investments. So if anybody had any updates or wanted to do any sharing around that, that would be great.
Are you saying right now updates?
If anybody had any updates.
Yeah. I don't know if Beth, I don't know if we would have a lot of updates for the early MTSS side of things under the VIP B5. I think we're still working, all of the entities are working to meet so we can come together with as a vision of how all of those systems are going to interact and how we're going to move forward with the work. But working with the Title II, Title IV grants, still work underway, finishing up year one. We're going to be gathering data from that, and we have the early MTSS state leadership team that's been created, and if anybody's interested in that, right now it's under the Title II and Title IV grant, but so you could contact the early education team at the AOE or contact Beth, BBF, because it is under a BBF heading. So, but that team is going to then look at that data and help advise moving forward, those, with the VIP B5. So. I don't know if I mentioned this also last month, but Kate Rogers was awarded a national champion award at the National Center for Pyramid Innovation Model, their national conference. So she was two she was one of 2 people nationally recognized for work with pyramid model practices. So the state of Vermont got a little kudos along with Kate. So that just happened last month at their national conference as well.
Thanks, Amy. That's amazing. Wow. Thanks for sharing. Does anyone else have any updates they want to share before we get started?
The May 22nd State Advisory Council meeting also serves as our annual Vermont Early Childhood Action Plan Summit. It's virtual still. So all are invited as folks who are here at VCAP committees and kind of clearly invested in our long-term work. We would love your voice. This is a meeting that largely is spent in small groups, thinking about how are we doing reaching our 5-year strategic plan, and what do we want to focus on in the coming year? What are the emerging policy recommendations and needs? So I will put the agenda and link in the chat.
Great. Thanks, Beth. Great. Well, I guess we'll move on and get started with our agenda today. I'm going to turn it over to Beth, who's going to introduce the panel of speakers.
Awesome. Thank you. So as many of you are aware, the Early Learning and Development Committee is one of our 7 VCAP committees, specifically kind of monitoring our work towards Goal 3, which is children and families have access to high quality opportunities that meet their needs. And so when we think about the opportunities that families turn to and need over the course of, prenatal through age 8, one of those key services, excuse me, is Children's Integrated Services. And it's, while we talk about some of the issues related and kind of in concert that CIS serves and supports, we haven't actually talked specifically about how the program is doing in a while. And so ELD leadership decided to invite some CIS leaders to join us to talk very briefly about what is CIS and what are the services, and more importantly, how are we doing in meeting the needs of kids and families to be able to access services. So we have Julia Wayne, who's a personnel development coordinator, excuse me, Ann Dillenbeck joining us. She's the CIS program improvement manager, and Claire Kendall, who's the co-executive director of the Family Center at Washington County, who administers CIS, and others here. I can see many others who are already connected to CIS, but we're going to start there and move to discussion.
Thank you so much, Beth, for inviting us. And we know that the majority of this time that we have with this group should be discussion, and that many of you already know quite a bit about CIS. I'm seeing so many familiar faces here. It's great to see you all. So actually, we have a little presentation which we'll go through kind of quickly, and then we wanted to give some time for Claire to share her practical and direct experience implementing CIS, and then open it up for questions. And I didn't include kind of an overview of what CIS is. And as you go, I'm just jumping in. It's sort of a snapshot Beth asked for, so I'm jumping into topics that I thought would be particularly interesting to this group. So it would make total sense if you have questions or don't know the context of something, please feel free to ask. CIS integrates 4 sets of services: early intervention for children ages birth to 3, early childhood and family mental health, in some regions now prenatal through age 6, to age 6, specialized childcare, 6 weeks through up to age 13, and Strong Families Vermont Home Visiting, which includes both responsive home visiting and sustained home visitings. The sustained home visiting is evidence-based models. We're implementing MESH, the Maternal Early Childhood Sustained Home Visiting Program that comes from Australia, and Parents as Teachers, which has been in Vermont for a long time, so people are probably familiar with that. So it's a big umbrella, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I'll present a little bit, then Julia will jump in, and then we'll go to Claire. Sorry, the band is in my way. Okay. All right. So as Beth said, we know that you all focus on this particular ECAP goal. And so we wanted to talk a little bit about how CIS contributes to meeting that goal. So the first part says that all children and families, and we wanted to note that CIS is primary prevention and serves the most vulnerable. So we have particular populations that we're prioritizing, and we're actually not a universal support. So that's one caveat about CIS. However, within that population, we provide, hopefully, and I would say high quality kind of wraparound services. I think a lot of people equate, when they hear CIS, they think about those early intervention services for children ages birth to 3, the federally mandated Part C program. I just want to highlight, we serve pregnant and new parents, as well as early childhood education programs, and children for specialized childcare up to the age of 13. Just to tell you a little bit more about the population that we serve, 82% are Medicaid recipients. CIS is funded with a combination of Global Commitment Medicaid dollars and general fund dollars. It's about an 80-20 split in that funding. About half our clients receive early intervention. Within that set of clients, they may also receive other services within CIS. So we know that about half don't receive EI and receive the other services. And it could be more than half receive the other services because some combine EI with other services. And then here are just some numbers about how many clients are referred annually and served monthly. CIS every 6 months collects performance measures from the regional contractors. There's a fiscal agent within every region who submits the report. It's called the semi-annual data report, and it includes quantitative data based on these performance measures, as well as qualitative data. We ask for narratives from the regions and pull themes from those narratives and share them back across. Our primary venue for that has been the CIS coordinators meeting. But just looking at the outcomes and the question, are we delivering high quality services that meet children and families' needs? We can see that, a large percentage of clients are achieving at least one goal, if not more. A little over half exit because they've met all their goals on their plan. We do pretty well in meeting timelines, always some area for improvement. And our percentage of clients that are exiting, that we're not continuing in the program because they are lost to follow up, which means we've made diverse attempts, at different times of day, different ways to reach them, but have lost contact with them. The team, our multidisciplinary teaming structure is pretty helpful in reaching clients, but sometimes, you know, this happens. I wanted to, a lot of the quantitative data that I just shared with you is about goals. So I wanted to give you some examples of the types, you know, so what are these goals that clients are achieving or working on? And it's a range of things from child development, you know, communication and language is a big focus, to social emotional support, supporting families with their routines, and housing. We're not a primary housing program, but we connect families with housing resources and support them through the process, and support around early childhood education with funding and consultation. Just some more data. This is specific to the early intervention program. We have a family survey that we conduct annually. And BBF has recently published a data brief, and I'm sorry I don't have the link to that readily accessible, but maybe someone could put it in the chat. Thank you in advance. That really looked at the, again, this has a quantitative and qualitative part. So BBF really looked at the comments. That was what we shared with them, and did a wonderful analysis, and shared a lot of positive feedback, as well as some recommendations for improvement based on that input from families. Looking at the quantitative part, there are questions about achieving certain family outcomes. One of them, this is just one of three, services help, oh, actually it's not three, but anyway, this is one of them. Did CIS help families help their children develop and learn? And you can see, as you would expect, a bit of a dip in, you know, at the height of the pandemic, but then, you know, coming back up again is nice to see. And families, you know, by and large, this is a pretty narrow percentage range, report that CIS does help them. And if we can help families help their children, that has, you know, the most lasting impact. Here's an example of a comment from that survey. Families can ask, can add their comments and can ask to follow up with someone from the CIS state team. We invite them to join leadership like the Vermont Interagency Coordinating Council. And I just noted here at the bottom that while we have this terrific data from CISEI, we don't have the same family feedback from the other three sets of services. And so we actually have been working with the VICC and the CIS coordinators to the proposal right now. This is not decided or in concrete planning, but the proposal we're exploring is to do a point in time survey coordinating with BBF Data's Evaluation Committee about when that should happen, just to get input from any client receiving CIS who is not receiving CISEI. So hopefully we'll have some more data from a broader range of CIS clients soon. Beth asked me to mention about the CIS's interaction with the Vermont Integrative, well, I've forgotten it now, integration project, I think, or program. Anyway, Birth to 5, it's the new PDG grant, and CIS has several areas of overlap, including with infant mental health consultation, a number of things, professional development. But this project, I just wanted to highlight, project 6.2. Over 3 years, the first focus, so this has to do with, the broad title is supporting children with disabilities and specialized needs, and the specific nature of it is around the special accommodation grants. to support children with specialized needs in early childhood education programs where there are safety or, inclusion concerns. So the first year is about streamlining the payments. The second and third year are about additional financial supports, which is terrific because we've had additional funding through ARPA. That will be ending, and we'll continue to have some additional funding through this grant. And then in year 3, evaluation looking at the early MTSS data, which we hope will give the strong base to the pyramid so that there will be less need. We know it won't eliminate the need, but reduce the need for these SAG grants. So evaluate with that data to plan future strategies. I wanted to give you an update on what's already happening with the special accommodation grants. Some of you may have experienced this directly and hopefully heard good feedback about it. The application is now through JotForm online. And so that makes it, I hope, 100% easier for people filling out the application, often a program director, and for the review team reviewing it. So it no longer has to, documents have to be sent to the CIS childcare coordinator and then uploaded, which added, an additional administrative step. Also, because we've had additional funding, we've been able to have the awards go beyond the previous cap of $10,000 to support more the actual cost, particularly of hiring individual assistants. So we know programs need to pay them more to recruit and retain people. And also we've made some adjustments so that there's a way to renew the grant that's easier, so that people can look more at the possibility of hiring someone for a year, which is more attractive in recruiting. And then finally expanded the programs can apply for equipment, materials, and consultation, in addition to individual assistance, whatever they choose. So I know we're moving quickly. I just want to pause here before I shift to Julia and ask if there are any questions. If we want to wait until after the presentation, we can do that too. But are there any clarifying questions at this point? Okay, then I will go ahead and let Julia present. And Julia, just say next slide and I'll go ahead and move the slides.
Okay, sounds good. One of my roles in my new role has been to do the CIS workforce recruitment and retention survey, which is a wonderful and very rich survey. We're getting a lot of information about the workforce. And yep, great. So you can just scooch ahead right there. That's perfect. So why is this important related to what we're talking about today? Because it helps us understand the CIS community of professionals, including how they're doing and their needs. Why might they leave? Why might they stay? Which directly, of course, impacts children and families and their access to high quality opportunities that meet their needs. So this is this is a survey that's been held for 6 years with a little blip in 2020. Didn't happen then. And so the information that we just received back, we are considering it to be information from 2022. And a little bit less, I think less than half of the CIS workforce responded, but we also think that we have fewer staff right now. So we're working on getting an accurate head count. And some of the results of this information in the past have been reported out in the CDD's early childhood and after school workforce report. But we are working on a little bit more of a formal report to be able to share the results in more detail down the road. And you can go to the next slide. So we wanted to show some examples of the data that we're collecting. We just have a couple of slides today. And so the first piece is this, that this graph shows that a general workforce of people in CIS who are pretty well educated. More have a master's degree now than ever before. And the second runner up to this is a bachelor's degree. So Anne, you can go to the next slide. Thank you. Okay, this is really big, really important. Why might people leave? And maybe there are some parallels to the early childhood workforce as a whole here, right? So we could start with the negatives. Only a third of respondents actually said that they're not planning to leave. So hopefully many are planning to stay. But stress and burnout certainly has been consistent over the recent years. Too much paperwork continues. With a slight increase actually over recent years. There are also some relative positives with clearly decreasing trends across low wages, few benefits, few opportunities to advance. That's regarding reasons why people might leave. So decreasing trends in those areas, which might indicate that people may be a little bit more satisfied in their roles than previous years. Okay, Anne, you can go to the next slide, please. And so here's a great slide about, this really helps drive strategic planning, right? What would improve CIS staff work environments? So for an increasing small percent, their environment seems pretty good without the need for improvement. For some, the challenges like compensation, benefits, better morale, lower stress, more trust and respect. The percentage of responses has decreased in recent years, which may also indicate more satisfaction. But with that said, compensation and benefits continues to be the highest response for what would improve work environments at 55%. Less paperwork, lower caseloads continue in second place. And third place is the need for more staff, right? I mean, that's everywhere. So Anne, you can go to the last. So, and then we do have some data gaps and that we need to work on. So one, we don't collect input or we don't have a general way of collecting input from staff when they leave. So we don't specifically know why people are leaving. And we haven't had a way of measuring turnover for CIS staff. And then the last bullet here is that it would just be great to have a centralized data system to help track the workforce, kind of like BFIS. So thank you. Yeah, that's all I have today. And if you have any questions.
Super, Julia. Thanks for zipping along. Yeah, let's just pause here before we turn it over to Claire. Any clarifying questions? Okay, Claire, you are on, and I will show the slides, but you tell me when you want me to take them down.
Yeah, no problem. So this is a great group. I'm preaching to the choir, I feel like, in terms of some of what I kind of had prepared to present. I would really love for this to be interactive. I think in terms of piggybacking on some of what, if you go to the next one, I think, Anne, were the ones I put together. Yeah. So I've been at the Family Center for quite a while, 23 plus years, of which I think the last 7, perhaps, maybe we've been bundled in terms of CIS. And we're also the fiscal agent for Washington County. We provide early intervention, the CIS childcare coordinator, the CIS coordinator, regional coordinator, family support home visiting or strong home visiting, as well as early intervention. And so just pulling together, and also I've been a member of the Alliance for the Parent-Child Center Network for years now in terms of advocacy on a statewide level for CIS services. So really fluidly, like we can talk about kind of either in terms of how it looks with boots on the ground in regions or like in a statewide advocacy perspective. But really, I think Vermont is a state being proud and hanging our hat on this first bullet point around prevention and early intervention services. I think it's something that we're really proud of in our region, and when we talk about it around the state, that there are results. There are absolute short-term, long-term results that we're all seeing from the investment in CIS. From a parent perspective, that kind of front door point of access to services or that entry, having it be more streamlined, having that collaboration happening that is kind of like it's weekly at these coordinating meetings around the state and administrative meetings as well. So that's ironed out, and what the family what the family sees is more of a streamlined access to service. One person to call, one primary relationship, and maybe they're the one that helps bring in the nurse if there's failure to thrive or some other medical needs that need addressing, breastfeeding, et cetera. So, but they have one kind of friendly face to access, and that's something that we're proud of. I think all of us that work in CIS around the state, and we hear that from parent feedback, anecdotally from like 10 years prior to now. It's gotten a little better. I think the collaboration in the communities has tremendously improved. I think we always had strong collaborations with our partners, home health and nursing, as well as early childhood and family mental health. But this has formalized that process, and it's formalized a lot of dialogue that maybe we weren't having before that we are now, whether it's outcomes-based performance measures, looking at regional caseloads and distribution of kind of funds, and is that allocation feeling equitable or not? So it formalizes the arena to have those conversations with a structure, but they're collaborative still, I feel like, in nature. The childcare coordinators play a really critical role. I think people know now kind of more than ever. Turnover is a challenge. I think we've all experienced across the state being hit by CIS turnover in our region. Early intervention and the CIS childcare coordinator position were, I think, at least 8 months, 8-9 months vacant. We had to be really creative, and I'm happy to say, knock on wood, we are currently fully staffed, but that's not the case of our colleagues across the state. So I think the numbers you saw, the slides a few back in terms of COVID, some of the impacts are significant for the childcare community, right? So childcares are stretched beyond what they're able to really do to keep the lights on and in a lot of ways and keep the program staffed, let alone working with children that are in family services or in specialized care, foster care, and getting what they need, extra stars or certification to become a specialized childcare coordinator. So that's really a challenge right now, expanding that capacity and training and supporting those programs and workforce to serve children that need specialized childcare placements, and supporting the foster families and supporting the family services workers. And FSD staff are maxed beyond right now. And I'm sure everyone here is hearing the same stories in terms of their district offices and caseloads. And so really trying to support that. So that's a unique function. I feel like that's being stretched. We talk a lot about early intervention, but the specialized childcare it's critical, and it's got quite a stretch right now. Early interventionists are right now, I think, probably in our region, 55 to 60% of the kids I think in Barrie, we're averaging around 177, 178 clients per month, and about 55% or more, depending, are in early intervention. Those are birth or 3 Part C eligible children with medical or developmental delays. And so that's a significant amount of the population that we're working with in CIS, linking with childcare providers, supporting parents as advocates and their child's primary teacher, strengths-based written one plans. So it's got family voice in the one plan, it has family goal, and it matches what they're seeing as the primary need. Maybe it's nap time, maybe it's bedtime routines, a lot of it's routines based, housing, food security, insecurity, and access to Medicaid eligibility or Katie Beckett Medicaid, et cetera. So our early interventionists are kind of like multitask heroes. I feel like pediatricians, there's a significant link with pediatric offices and family practices around referrals. And right now we're having a pretty big challenge across the state with children that are suspected or are on the spectrum, are ASD, but there's a backlog in terms of being seen in certain parts of the state for diagnosis, UVM, Dartmouth, Hitchcock, and supporting family practices around how to, pediatricians to how to be able to diagnose. And I already mentioned family services and specialized childcare, but there is a significant linkage for captive referrals for early intervention, working with family services around children that have are in conditional custody or are in foster care or in family custody. But part of their one plan is supporting the goals that are also family service goals in terms of safety and nutrition, access to special ed supports that they're entitled to, and supporting parents and following through. So I feel like I kind of rambled, and I guess the other word I didn't say, which is navigate. I guess that jumps out. A lot of support in navigating. It's a complicated world, so complicated. If this is your first child and your experience is that they're eligible for Part C early intervention, it can be really overwhelming. And so there's a tremendous amount of family support and kind of just basic education that goes along with the relationship, while you're really, the child is the identified client, the family really is the customer. So
Thank you,
questions?
Claire.
Yeah.
You're clearly such an expert and wealth of information. So Beth, I know you're thinking of the whole meeting, but we'd like to open it up and just see what questions or comments people have, and you tell us when we need to stop.
Yeah, maybe I can just give a little bit of framing before
Okay.
we jump in, and as people think about their questions and comments, given, you know, we have great representation across the system right now. And just thinking about early learning and development committee, typically these conversations, I mean, we think about kind of what is needed, right? Like, clearly, I appreciate the data and that you and Julia presented, and kind of the anecdotal stories, Claire, that you share, right, about chronic challenges in being able to meet the needs of kids and families. We know that CIS has been asking for more money kind of year after year in the legislature and lacking kind of the sufficient investments. What might emerge as policy recommendations that come from ELD towards and bring to the State Advisory Council? So just thinking that can be one outcome of the discussion, is really those considerations of identifying the gaps and the needs, but also kind of the policy recommendations. So I will leave that and open it.
I'm going to jump in since there's silence. A database. So I beat that drum, I think, pretty consistently for years now, as well as co-director / business partner Joe. We are very much interested in seeing the state roll out a statewide database. Some regions have something, and some people are really just limping along with Excel spreadsheets. And it is such a data-heavy, data-driven system. I can't underscore enough that policy and BBF really pushing towards formalizing recommendations, or that it did happen last year, but really continuing to push on the recommendations around database that's state-owned.
And I just want to add, Beth, really quickly to what you said. The increases in the CIS, in the budget for CIS over the past few years have really come from the advocacy work that's happened and through the legislature. And this year, for the first time in the governor's budget, there's an increase about $1 million to the CIS budget. And, you know, the legislative session isn't finished yet, and we're waiting to see, but are hopeful about that happening. So that would be, I agree with what you said, Beth. There have been a little bit increase and it doesn't meet the need, but a little shift that was in the governor's budget this year.
Hi, everyone. Sorry to be late. I have a question. And so if this was covered earlier, Julia's comment about needing more specialty providers, I'm just curious how Are those how they are incorporated into the system of care? Are those contract positions? I'm just curious how you go about even accessing those specialty providers.
Keith, maybe this would be a good moment for you to jump in.
I'm going to pass to Claire next, because I think each region does it a little bit differently. Some fiscal agents actually will hire an individual provider. They will be on staff, formal employee. Some they have a contracted agreement to serve some of their children, and some it's a more informal agreement where they're taking on some number of children in some circumstances. But it certainly varies across the state in both that arrangement and overall capacity. Claire, I don't know if you could offer an anecdote on how it happens in Barrie.
I think it's really, I hate to say this, but it's a system that's very person specific. There's a lot of heroes around the state that are SLPs and OTs and have been doing this careers decade long. And when folks decide to retire, we have significant gaps across the state. And so how to structure something that is systemically kind of built in, that grows and develops and recruits and retains like this cohort of special providers, service providers across the state, so we're not so person specific and driven, would be a significant. There are things such as obviously salary benefits that we compete with in terms of the public school sector, reimbursement for mileage and travel, reimbursement for the number of visits. So some, they're capped in terms of if they can bill for evaluations or other transition planning meetings. So having more flexibility so they're reimbursed probably at a higher rate and for the totality of their work instead of just what's billable and allowable, as well as also, I think, promoting from the educational, from like the pipeline, so how can we incentivize advanced degree certification, training to actually keep them in the field for a period of time, as opposed to, I mean, the public school needs it too, we all need it. So it's not an either or, it's an and, just building the system.
So when you're looking for a physical therapist, these are all negotiated at the regional level?
Oh yeah. I mean, and sometimes we're able to hire, like the Family Center, a number of regions have some of these positions actually on staff, part of their team. And so they can go out and work with the percentage of their caseload. We have a high percentage of our caseload that has PT need as a service need. And so we share him with the school districts specifically. And so we have a part-time PT, you are developing that in your own regions with your own relationships and cultivating that. And if you lose that person, you have the gap.
Thanks for that.
And I think I'll just add in terms of when I had talked about ASD, that's another big gap. And I know an RFP went out a couple of times to try and develop sort of a program, so to speak, a structure to have at least more diagnostic capacity for birth control.
Part of Julia's role, so I'm going to turn to you, Julia, is recruitment and retention, like the workforce survey, in addition to professional development opportunities. So Julia, maybe you want to talk about some ideas in the works for that, because it also includes those specialty providers.
Sure. So working on developing a CIS roadshow and taking it around to higher ed institutions and tech centers, thinking about ways to reach out to people who are learning related to the various disciplines of CIS and see if we can get them to join the CIS team along the way, early educators as well. That the thing that we hear again and again is, why would people go to work, for CIS when they can get a much higher paid job in the school districts? And so just trying to think creatively about that. Maybe there's something in the legislature. I don't know, maybe there's a way that the school districts and CIS could collaborate more. Maybe there's more funding. I don't know. That could be an area to explore as well. I know, the school districts used to hire early childhood special educators who would collaborate more with Children's Integrated Services and support Part C at least. And that kind of ended. So but maybe there are also ways of contracting with people across the state to do some virtual support as well. It's another area to think about. When somebody hasn't, some of these children haven't received speech and language for like 7 months. I mean, in some regions, I mean, that's children who are just 2 who are in desperate need of support. So how can we be creative?
Julia, is there any virtual support going on now?
There is some virtual support, and that was actually a positive that many people highlighted from the workforce and recruitment retention survey. It was there was a question around what has changed post-COVID, and a lot of people said they have a lot more flexibility with virtual telehealth support, and some of those services are billable, so that's a positive.
And in Bennington, there's a very innovative model where, Keith, help me out with this if I get it wrong, but a person who's qualified to diagnose autism spectrum disorder, Dr. San Loud, has been doing that virtually, and the CIS EI team has been arranging that using some special technology that's HIPAA compliant. So that's another promising practice.
Beth, I'll jump in as an observer of this, not as a provider. I want to comment on something that's it's a combination of 2 comments that have already been made, one about funding and one about the variations in contract in the way that the specialized services are provided from region to region. It's obviously it's a strength in Vermont. It's also a weakness, just as an observer looking at how the contract negotiations occur for providing services and the variations from region to region. The way the state has struggled to work through that, and the discomfort and displeasure and stronger responses to the outcomes of those negotiations on the part of providers around the state. That some of the fiscal agents and some of the regional folks are feeling better about those outcomes, and some are feeling really strongly negative about those outcomes. And I think anyone running a system should say, if you have that range of opinions about the outcomes, that should be a yellow and a red flag, that there's something not functioning as well as it should, as highly functioning as it should, if that's your outcome. I mean, obviously there are winners and losers all the time, but this is a persistent winner and loser situation that I think bears some attention, and it would be better if we had a better way of doing this without losing the strengths of the regionalization and of the customized service delivery that can occur from region to region. So that's something that our working group is going to be trying to figure out if there's anything to be done, and perhaps ELD might consider that as an aspect of both service delivery and funding, that the actual nuts and bolts bean counting contracting aspect of how that all plays out is something that also could bear some attention. And I feel like I have to represent that on behalf of the people that I work with, because I hear that all the time from the losers in those negotiations, but also from some of the winners, that this is not working well. And I think sometimes they don't know who to say that to. I mean, Keith, I know you hear this, but it's challenging to figure out how to talk about it, who to talk about it with. I don't think anyone wants to step on toes or be disrespectful, but there are very strong opinions about this, and I think it bears some scrutiny.
Thanks, Matt. So really interesting discussion, kind of identifying where there are opportunities, which is fabulous, and where there are kind of different challenges that may require kind of a variety of approaches. So thank you for all of those, all of you who are working on these issues, and for this like deeper dive into CIS, right? Yes, funding, but like being able to have a discussion about some of these other unique needs around access, workforce, for sure. And so I would imagine there will be additional conversations that we can have to be able to kind of formulate what the committee itself may recommend, or at least what's needed for discussion in the future. Claire, your thoughts?
I think one other thing I didn't add, but I think it dovetails a little bit, is around parents as teachers, the PAT rollout. It's not necessarily, it's not a CIS bundled service, but it's going to be, in my mind, tremendous value added. So just making sure that your group is aware of that, that's actually in process. I think 8 regions are contracting across the state with VDH around rolling out parents as teachers, which is an evidence-based home visiting model that's worldwide, actually. And Vermont already is standing it up. I think in Lemoyle, Ashley is well-versed and does it, as well as up in St. Albans. But my point being, for us to also look at the wins and the successes, and it's not universal. It's not like there's not the universal home visiting model there, but where it's an expanded array within that menu of services for kids and families that's evidence-based, and it's pretty exciting to have it as kind of the complement to the nursing mesh model, to have something that's non-nursing, a non-medical model. And so just holding that up for your committee to be aware of it, and I think continued advocacy to watch it as it rolls out and to see what the data looks like in terms of engagement and outcomes, and supporting the ongoing funding to keep the PAT and to see it actually hit all of the HS districts across the state. So just throwing that out there, as well as stay tuned on PAT.
Thank you. Will do. Okay. So in an effort to keep us on time, I am going to need to transition this conversation, but I would imagine more is coming. So thank you so much to our presenters and for all who are here. We are going to transition to Joanna to talk about STARS and SPARQS.
Hi, everybody. I'm Joanna Vasey. I work at the Child Development Division, and I administer the current STARS program and have been working with a team at CDD on revising the STARS system and also on the SPARQS grant. So I will just go ahead and jump right into my presentation. I'll stop periodically for people to ask questions, and you can also ask questions at the end of the presentation. And the last slide will have my contact information if people want to contact me directly for more questions. And I will share my screen. Okay, so here we go. I'll give you an overview of the STARS revision process and some of a few details of how the system is going to roll out. So the reason for revising STARS is that the current system has been in place for 20 years. And in that time, quite a bit of information has been collected about how QRIS systems work. QRIS stands for Quality Recognition and Improvement System, by the way. So a study of the Vermont STARS system, which was conducted in 2016 by Child Trends, showed that the STAR level designations that are in the current system do not align with actual program quality based on using a program quality assessment tool. So we had all these really compelling reasons to take a look at our system and do our system redesign. So the new system, the guiding thinking for the new system is that criteria for elements of quality are are directly linked to positive outcomes for children. The criteria for the elements of quality can be applied in all types of early childhood and after school settings. So in center-based early childhood programs, in home-based care and learning programs, in public preschool and preschool partner programs, in Head Start settings, in after-school settings. Another aspect of the new system is that the levels build clearly from one to the next. In the current system, it's based on programs earning points across a variety of content areas, and then the total of points equals the star level of the program. So at any level, programs could be meeting different criteria. So this level, what we are calling the block system of levels building on one on each other, means that every program at every level has met the same criteria to reach that level designation. And the criteria for the elements of quality were chosen using an equity lens. And so here are the elements of quality. There are only 3. We're trying to make this system be simpler and more accessible for programs and less administrative burden to support programs in working through the system. So the 3 elements of quality are adult-child interactions, family and youth engagement, and responsive practice. Adult-child interactions means the way that adults in the classroom interact with children to support their social, emotional, and cognitive development. And it's specifically measured by the class program assessment tool and by the program quality assessment tools for school age programs that are published by the Weichert Center. Family and youth engagement starts with programs using the Center for the Study of Social Policies, Strengthening Families, program self-assessment tool, or Youth Thrive survey. And taking the information from that process and developing policies and procedures in their programs to engage families and youth. The last one, responsive practice. Responsive practice, basically taking a look at how programs and how program staff make themselves aware of all aspects of individual children's needs, interests, culture, family culture, race and ethnicity, gender identity, linguistic background of the family that they're coming from, and take all of those factors into consideration when planning activities and implementing them for children in the program. Does anybody have any questions before I go to the next slide? Okay. The biggest difference between the old system and the new system is that this revised system will be based on a continuous quality improvement plan. So all programs application is basically going to be the CQI plan. It'll be based on participating programs create the CQI plan that serves as the application and is submitted with evidence to verify that the program is working toward CQI goals. It will be a portfolio style application and much of what the program is going to use for evidence will be their plan, do, study, act improvement cycles that are part of CQI. And here's another, this is just a little bit of picture of how we see these, the basic, very basic elements of the revised system. Okay. So there are still 5 levels in the revised system. The first level, as is the case now, is regulatory compliance. The second level is a self-study and creation of the initial CQI plan and goals. In the self-study, the program does the Strengthening Families of Youth Thrive survey, and they also assess the knowledge program staff have of the various elements of quality and address those gaps in the CQI plan. And that would include developmentally appropriate practice, the Vermont Early Learning Standards, child observation and recording techniques and how they're used to develop curriculum, for a few. Then level 3 is early implementation of the CQI plan goals. So in level 3, the program's beginning implementation of the goals they created in level 2. And then at levels 4 and 5, the program demonstrates how they've improved on their plan goals and developed new goals to continue that improvement to the full implementation of the plan goals that they developed back at the second level of the system. Any questions about that? Okay, so here, this is a little bit of a picture of how the blocks will build upon each other and across the elements of quality. At level 3, it's an early implementation. It is also the beginning of the program having program assessments by an observer or assessor, who's not part of the program, and who'll be provided. And this observer, the way programs will access program assessments will be through the SPARQS program, and I'll get to that farther along. And programs will also be able to receive support in working through these levels and developing their CQI plan, especially at the beginning, because it will be a new process for most folks. Program support will be provided through the STARS office and also through SPARQS for learning about and developing this process for programs. The new program is expected to launch July 1, 2023, as long as all of the internal processes that need to happen are able to take place by that date, and it's so far looking pretty good. So we're feeling pretty confident about that date. The first year of the program will be a pilot year, so that we're able to kind of assess how the system is working for people and make tweaks if necessary. And also programs applying during that pilot year will be protected against a decrease in their STAR level, so that they won't be jeopardized by having to be the first people interacting and using this new system. We'll also be contacting programs individually who are going to have a STARS renewal date during the pilot year and arranging for individual and small group training and other types of supports for them to be able to use this system. And we'll also, as I mentioned, be using this first year and these individuals small group trainings to provide data for us about the system and how it's working. So right now, as I mentioned, there were internal processes that we're working on, and the administrative rules that are part of legislative process need to be changed for STARS to enable to accommodate the new system. And so we are working through that legal process right now. We are at the stage of the final proposed rule filing with the Secretary of State and LCAR, which is the Legislative Committee on Administrative Rules. The LCAR review is set for May 25th. And if everything goes according to plan and the new proposed rules are approved on that date, then the final will be adopted and we will be able to move forward with the proposed changes. And at that time, the STARS, all the new information will be able to be presented on the STARS website, and we'll be able to move forward with publicity about the new system. So we're excited about that, and we're busily preparing for all those things to take place. Additional supports, and I have another whole slide deck about SPARQS if folks are interested in seeing that. It's pretty basic, but it gives you a more fully fleshed idea than about the system than what is here on this slide. So SPARQS stands for System for Program Access to Resources for Quality Supports. And I'm happy to announce that Vermont AUIC was awarded the grant to run this project and program, and we're really excited about that. That just happened a few days ago. And so more information about accessing the system and when it's going to actually be up and running, and a variety of other information will also be becoming available anytime now. The SPARQS is going to provide an array of services, including program assessments for the STARS system. It's going to include management of the Vermont Early Childhood Networks, and also, and probably the largest bit of work that is going to be part of this project is coaching, mentoring, training, and providing resources and referrals for early childhood and after school programs, including STARS applications, but not limited to programs that participate in STARS. So there are some additional activities that are happening and as part of moving this process forward, and that some are completed and some are not. One is receiving approval from the Child Development Division for NACI trainings to be accepted for credential account credit. Most of the on-demand trainings that the National Association for the Education of Young Children offers on their website are directly connected to the elements of quality for STARS, and they're very high quality, good source of trainings. And so we really wanted to be able to, for folks to be able to receive credit for these, especially those that are working on the entry levels of the system of STARS. We are still working to designate an online portfolio style application with the Agency of Digital Services of the state of Vermont. We want this to be easy to use and well-functioning online type of application process. And so that's being developed as we speak. As I mentioned before, approval of the STARS administrative rules is in process. And then as soon as that happens, we'll begin the launch activities, publicity, trainings, intensive supports for early applicants to the new system, first year pilot data tracking, and instating a STARS advisory committee to provide stakeholder input to that first year pilot, and then ongoing to make continual improvements to the STARS system. And if you have questions or comments, here's my contact information. I'll leave that slide up for a minute, and then I'll just see if people have questions.
Hi there, I have a question. Sorry, my video is off right now, but I'm Jen Lestage. I'm from Champlain Valley Head Start. And I had heard through the grapevine that there will be a streamlined application for Head Start programs.
Yes.
Is that still true?
Yes. So there'll be a couple different streamlined processes in the course of developing the new system. We ran some crosswalks. So NACE accredited and Head Start managed programs will still qualify automatically for 5 stars. Programs that our implementation sites for early MTSS will qualify for credit for program assessment at the 4 and 5 star level for adult child interactions and responsive practice. And programs that are Head Start partners will also receive credit at the 4 and 5 star level for adult child interactions. So they'll still have to provide information in their CQI plan about the other elements of quality, but they receive automatic credit for that. And then there's also credit for family childcare programs for National Association of Family Childcare Accreditation. And I think those are falling in around level 2 and 3 for adult child interactions and family engagement and family and youth engagement. But so there are we're trying to make sure that people that are already doing some types of activities can double dip and receive credit for them as well in the STARS system without having to do other similar types of activities in order to demonstrate they meet the standards at a variety of levels.
Can I ask a question a slightly different way to make sure I understand what you were just saying? So certain like NACE accredited Head Start programs, that's an automatic piece. The others that you were referencing, essentially, they could provide evidence that they meet a certain level by holding a National Family Childcare Accreditation or being an early MTSS administration. It's not that they automatically meet that level. That's one of the ways in which they can provide evidence that they meet one of the criteria for a certain level.
If they provide,
I know, that's why I wanted to ask, because I'm not sure I totally understand yet.
If they provide, so if a program is, let's say, I'll choose a Head Start partner. If a program is a Head Start partner, they've received a class assessment as part of that. It's not procedurally exactly the same as the way one would be provided by a SPARQS assessor, but it would still, if they're a Head Start partner, the assumption that we'll be making is that they've had a class assessment and they're receiving coaching or some other kind of support related to the information that was derived from that class observation. I don't want to get too in the weeds. It happens a little
It
bit
doesn't
differently
have to
than
be issued by the SPARQS coach. There are other
No.
pathways to providing
Yep.
those sorts of assessments. Sure. Thank
Yep.
you.
Yes. Any other questions folks have for me? And then if I have time, I'll give you a little more in depth on SPARQS too.
I did just want to say, like, just to clarify, we're still working on the NACI part, folks, just in case anybody's like going to go and take a training tomorrow. It doesn't count in the system yet, specifically just because we got to figure out how to get their documents to meet the BFIS criteria. Nothing to do with quality. We totally, like, I promise we want them to count. We're just trying to figure out how we can get the documents we need from NACI that BFIS makes us enter when we put it in there. Just, I want to make sure that was clear. We're still working on it. We're getting there, but we're not quite there yet.
Can I ask a quick question before we pop into SPARQS?
Sure.
I have a lot of school districts, right? Because the whole like leave for the summer mess, who expire in July. Should they anticipate that this will be something that they will need to complete under the new processes over the summer/fall, or will they fall under the old processes that they're doing before they leave the end of June?
So the answer for those folks is if they want to renew their certificate now before July 1, they're more than welcome to do so. And if they don't do that and they wind up being in that first group of folks that will be renewing, their STAR level isn't going to change. And I guess that's going to be a conversation maybe we need to have internally with AOE if they're because basically administratively how we would do that for STARS is their STARS certificate doesn't have has an end date, but their STAR designation doesn't have an end date until I enter one for them. And that's the way the BFIS system works. So we'll have to figure that out if a program also has to renew their pre-K pre-qualification application. There is a place in there where they have to put what their STARS renewal date is. So we will, we're having a planning session with Wendy Scott and her team at the AOE to figure out exactly some of those logistics for those folks that, like you say, have a July date to renew their STARS application.
Perfect.
I have I have kind of a follow-up question on that. I wondered if I've heard from a number of programs who are trying to plan for a fall renewal and wanted to take a look at the documentation that they might need to start compiling. Some of them already have familiarity with things like class or strengthening families. Do you expect that the handbook for renewals will come out before July 1, or do you think that we're going to need to wait? And then my follow-up question to that is about whether it's just going to be class or whether you're looking at teapot and tippy toes also.
So yes, the guidance manual will be on the STARS website as soon as LCAR, as soon as we have been approved by LCAR. And so, May 26th. I don't know, maybe not exactly that day, but as soon as the information can be published, it will be. Class is going to be the main program assessment tool that we're going to use. Unless a program is an early MTSS implementation site, then teapot or tippy toes can be used for those programs. Any other questions? If you you can on the CDD website on the STARS page now see there's a graphic that shows all the STARS levels and the criteria. It's the initial one that we came up with, and it's been altered a little bit since then, or actually some parts of it have been altered more than a little bit, but it just does give you still the general framework that you can look at and get more information about as well. So if there aren't any more questions, I'll go ahead and do a little bit about SPARQS. Okay, so here we go. This is very basic. A lot of what is in the SPARQS system is under development, but I can give you a sort of a broad overview of what it's going to be like. And okay, so the elements of the SPARQS system are quality coaching and support systems for early childhood and after school programs, program assessments for STARS, and administering and managing the Vermont Early Childhood Networks. And as I mentioned before, this question came up the last time we did a presentation, that the SPARQS system will support the STARS system, but it is not only for programs that are engaging with STARS, but also for all other regulated early childhood and after school programs. The quality coaching and support services will include individualized in-person or virtual supports, customized training, assisting with CQI plan development for STARS, and will serve program and regional needs. So to give you an example, let's say a program goes to the SPARQS system to request services, and the quality support specialist has a virtual meeting with the program director. And during that meeting, it's determined that there's a specific knowledge gap about child development for the staff in the program. And so then the quality support person working with that program might decide the best way to address this knowledge gap is to provide a customized training for this program. That's an example. One example of one of the many ways that that the SPARQS program might support a program toward improvement. There are going to be levels of support in the system. One is self-directed program resources, direct technical assistance, consultation and referral, training and updates, and then finally the most intensive supports would be coaching and mentoring. And as I mentioned, the way that programs will access the system is to contact, now we know it's Vermont AUIC, to request a service, and there will be an individual who will receive their request and will determine as part of that process what the level of support the program needs are and direct them to the appropriate level of service. And it could be that they just need to be guided to resources that they can access, and they can go on their merry way and use those resources in the way that they see fit, or they might need a little bit more direct technical assistance in accessing resources, or consultants or referrals to other organizations, or they might need training and updates that could be provided, or the most intensive level of support would be coaching and mentoring for the program. And the way that it's designed right now, there will be 6, I believe, program quality specialists and a person who will be overseeing the entire program, a director of the SPARQS system. There also will be a cadre of assessors who will be separate from the quality support specialists. And there will also be a group of I'm not sure how many there are, but also support specialists for after school programs. And those folks will be doing program assessment and coaching integrated in an integrated way for after school programs. Program assessments for STARS, as I mentioned, will be provided for early childhood and after school programs. The assessors will be certified to use program assessment tools and will be have inter-rater reliability, so that we can be confident that any one of the assessors who visits a program is going to be giving feedback that would be consistent with what any one of the other assessors would provide, and that the assessment process will be timely. As part of the work to administer and support the Vermont Early Childhood Networks, the networks will be surveyed to determine the interests and needs of the members. They'll be provided with technical assistance and resources to strengthen and sustain the networks. And the network leaders will be provided with consultation services and leadership development if necessary. And that the system will also provide the statewide network leader meetings. Those have been happening biannually, and I think, is that the right word? Twice a year. And as part of the survey to determine interests and needs, it'll be determined whether or not to keep that structure of twice a year network leader meetings, or revise that procedure depending on how the group self-determines what their need is. Oops. Wait a second, I think I might have not gotten all the way to the end. Let's see. There we go. Oh, no, that is the end. Okay, that's the end. Anybody have questions?
I do. I don't know if it's an appropriate question to ask, so feel free to disregard.
Yes.
If I remember correctly, the SPARQS award is using federal money, and it's for a fairly short time frame. And I wonder, like, this sounds like an excellent kind of rebuild, right? And to be able to bring services to folks who need it. And I'm curious kind of what the sustainability plan is, to be able to hopefully not have to rebuild it again. So I don't know if that's something you can talk about here.
I can say that the intention is for the system to continue and to be it's right now funded through ARPA dollars, and those have to be expended by the end of September 2024. So, and
That's okay.
I know there is a plan for additional funding, but I do not know exactly what that plan is, and certainly not well enough to share, publicly. But it's not. There's not an intention for it to just end at the end of the ARPA funding. I think there initially it was part of PDG, and that was thinking that would give more time to figure out what the more permanent funding source would be, but it did not make it into the final PDG. So.
Thanks.
I have another challenging question, Joanna. So I'm wondering a little bit if you have any idea what the impact on current programs and their star levels might be. Just from thinking about what I know about programs, I'm anticipating that some programs may experience a drop in their stars level. And I'm wondering what that might look like statewide.
I have no really idea of how to anticipate what will happen. This pilot year should really help us get a handle on that. I think that to achieve star levels is not going to be more difficult than it is now. I think it's going to be a very different process where instead of focusing on it's going to be much more process oriented rather than, you know, and the programs are going to need to be more engaged with that continuous quality improvement over the course of the 3 years of their STARS application cycle than they have been in this. And I think that, so I think it's going to, what's going to be challenging is making the shift in thinking about how the system works and what its purposes are. And many programs actually do a lot of things that we've identified as elements of quality. And the challenge for them will be to have a written process and to collect, you know, to collect information about how they're progressing and what their process is, and then to be able to organize it coherently and put it into this portfolio style application. And I'm imagining that's what a lot of the work will be to do to support programs engaging with the new system.
Yeah, and I guess I should be clear, I'm really excited about the measurements of the new system because I think they really are measuring quality. I think that it's going to just require such a shift in thinking for so many people that there's going to be a little bit of shock initially as people start working their way through this process.
Yep.
I just want to echo that piece that Meg just said. I think what I'm also hearing from our partner programs, from programs that I'm in contact with kind of in those informal channels is really a fear around this and the information that they've seen online, right? They're pulling up the chart. They are also looking at their processes already, and there's a lot of anxiety about at surface value. They're afraid that they're going to drop. And I think I'm also really excited about this change. I think this really makes it meaningful and not just I write paperwork really well. But I think that hand-holding meant in the best version of that phrase will be really important as programs get started working on this. And that will be a primary effort that'll need to be out there by a lot of people in messaging.
Yes. And I think, you know, once well, and also I think for, you know, all of this is going to be impacted or not, depending on what happens with the childcare bill. So I guess, you know, it's too soon to tell about that. But I think for a lot of people,
No, sorry, I interrupted you.
Go ahead.
So I have a question, and if you already said this, there is a childcare bill that is a little bit distracting right now, so I apologize. But I think, are we rolling this out? Did you tell me that we're rolling this out as a pilot in the beginning? Like, I'm just trying to think about the, you know, it's going to be new. There's a lot of different processes. Is there some sort of like place where there's a feedback loop onto how we tweak it, because I also know the intention is that the Child Development Division will have a little more opportunity to make it a better system when they see, you know, places where it needs to, and not have to go through such an onerous process. So I'm just wanting you to kind of comment on anything around, like, we roll something brand new out, and then how do we make sure that it's meeting everyone's needs and does what we intended?
Right. So there will be a CQI plan and process for the STARS system itself. And the STARS Advisory Committee will be, which, as I said, will be made up of stakeholders in the wide early childhood and after school field. And that committee will be largely providing recommendations based on feedback. There will be a collector tool on the website, as well as feedback that we'll be getting from the actual application process and supporting people as they go through the process. So the intention is that we'll be gathering as much information as we can to inform how to best implement the revisions.
Thanks, Joanne. Amy has a question.
It's not really a question, sorry, just a comment. I think we're also excited because a consequence of this is that when we're trying to look at sustainability on the early MTSS side of things, this being embedded, you know, these components being embedded within the STAR system, that's going to help with that sustainability, with those sustainability efforts, because we're looking at programs, we're looking at, you know, high quality, we're looking at the ways they're assessing, you know, we're just looking at critical components within their system, and then trying to provide some technical assistance on how they can continually improve. And that's, you know, based on implementation science, which is the early MTSS framework. So we're excited about that being a consequence of this revision as well.
Okay, now I want to put Sharon on the spot. Since she will be the new executive director of Vermont AYC as of Monday. No, so this is totally putting you on the spot, and you may not, because I know you just signed the agreement, what, like yesterday or the day before? But I'm curious if there's like just a draft timeline of just the initial phases of trying to get SPARQS up and running. And congratulations. I wasn't here earlier if that was brought up.
So that draft timeline is due Monday. So that's a big day. And we also have a board staff retreat on Monday as well. So to be determined, in the works, as Joanna said, things are really under development right now because we really weren't able to proceed with anything until we had that executed agreement. So first and foremost, the priority is going to be hiring a program director to help get this work done. So that's going to be one of the first things. But I mean, it's really going to be tied to our ability to hire and train and have staff, you know, go through the process of, you know, their class training, you know, the interreliability, rater reliability, like all of those pieces are going to actually dictate how quickly things are phased in. I mean, there are some things that can be phased in pretty quickly, you know, the resource librarians and things like that, but it's going to take a little bit of time to be able to have the staff up and ready to go for the actual coaching. And the process will also include an intake specialist. I think Joanna sort of mentioned that. And so that's going to be someone who's really going to be able to help, you know, address things. We will be doing, we'll be subcontracting with Vermont After School. And so they will also be building their components of the project as well. And some of the first things that we'll focus on are the Vermont Early Childhood Network pieces. So those things we can move quickly on. So it's really, we're going to have a lot of balls in the air at the same time, and we'll move forward as quickly as we can. The target date was July 1st, but that was with an executed contract on March 15th. So
Yeah.
things are going to probably be pushed back a bit. Hope that was
Thanks,
okay,
Sharon.
Joanna.
That's
Oh yeah,
helpful.
no, that was fine. I thought briefly about bringing you in on the presentation, and I thought I'll just let.
Well, this is the first time I've heard it said publicly the Vermont AUIC will be doing the work. So the communication hasn't gone out to the field yet. And we're prepared to be on the hot seat, but we're still working out those details.
Thanks, Sharon. Any other questions around SPARQS or STARS? It's very exciting.
I'll just say one thing. Welcome, Sharon, to your new life in this role. One of the things that I'm interested to see how it progresses is like the intersection between the SPARQS coaches and the Northern Lights Resource Advisors. I have in my head how that might divide and conquer to sort of provide individual supports and program supports and how connected those will be. But we'll give you a second to breathe first, Sharon. But that's a piece I'm really excited to dig into and like think creatively about how we can utilize the staffing that we have to really provide as much support to the field as we can based on our various expertise. There's like, you can read it as a conflict, which is why I want to say it out loud. I don't see it that way, and I think there's a ton of opportunity, but I'm excited to look at, see what happens, see how it all fits.
I think that's a great point, Becky, and I agree. And I think that it's going to be so exciting to have, broader support across the field right now. I think people have been eager for that, and I do think that we'll spend some time digging into that. That we'll be forming some sort of an advisory group to help. That will be one of the things we talk about for sure.
And Sharon, don't forget about us at First Children's Finance.
Oh yeah, we definitely have an agreement, a formal partnership as regard to the resource library. So we will be also working really closely.
Good.
Any other questions? Okay, so the next part of our discussion is going to focus on just sort of thinking about what you've heard today. What are some actions and considerations that we want to make note of? And that can be future topics, future guests, or just ideas around things we should dive deeper in or to consider for policy recommendations that we'll be making to the State Advisory Council. So think about that. And while you're thinking about that, I also just wanted to thank Jen Severance, who in part of her Let's Grow Kids role has supported my being able to co-chair this committee, and I forced her to do it through June. I won't be here at the June meeting, but I wanted to thank her for doing all the notes and organizing the YouTube and facilitating when I'm not here and helping us plan and all the work that she's been doing. So next month will be Jen's last meeting in this role. We're hoping she'll continue as part of the ELD committee, but just wanted to thank Jen for doing all of that stuff that I'm really not that good at. And so thanks for helping us move along smoothly and tracking all this. So now on to what did people hear today that we should make sure we capture in the notes. So when we do I also wanted to announce, maybe Beth, you did this, that Dawn Rouse from the Child Development Division has agreed to co-chair. She's away today, but she will join the meeting in June as her first meeting. So we're meeting with her next week or the week after to give her a little orientation and start planning the June meeting. And then she will be here with Jen and Beth in June for that meeting. This is really exciting to have a co-chair from the Child Development Division joining us. And so I'm excited about that. So what should we make note of as we're thinking about future meetings and thinking about our responsibility to have some policy recommendations to the State Advisory Council on some of the things that you heard today that we want to capture? and you can just jump in.
Not necessarily SAC recommendations, but I would love to have us in like October-ish, have Joanna back and give us a STARS, like how it's going update. In terms of, I think that would particularly for those of us in public schools, help support us in supporting our community partners and our public school peeps as we move to the new system.
Thanks, Becca. Yes, that's a great idea. We'll capture that and start building it. We build out our calendar when we meet. Sometimes we do have some things on the horizon, so we can think about plugging that in and getting that on Joanna's calendar and the Vermont AYC calendar, or whoever, whether it be Sharon or the project director for some of their work. So great. Any other?
Sherry, this is Cynthia, and I don't know about a policy recommendation as such, but I do wonder about this group sort of taking a level set after the legislative session has ended and sort of thinking about whatever happens, you know, sort of what could be next in terms of policy recommendations. I mean, the fact that there is hopefully a plan to keep SPARQS in place, but again, it's TBD. Like I just think at the end of the legislative session, our group might want to reconsider more broadly, like what do we really want to promote through policy recommendations? And I just think there are a number of things at the federal level in motion too. So just curious about that timing and what others think about that idea.
Yeah, that's a great point, Cynthia. And maybe at the June meeting, we do want to at least have it like a summary or update of sort of where everything has landed as the very, very starting point of that level set. Other thoughts? I had two. One of them Becca said, and that is a re-meet with what's happening with SPARQS and the STARS changes in the fall. And the other was, Matt's not here any longer, but I would love to have, he mentioned a working group that is going to be kind of looking at CIS. I would love to hear from that working group, dependent on their timeline, when they'll be doing that sometime in a future meeting as well, to understand what they're learning and what might be some outcomes of that we might want to know more about or get behind. Anything else before
I can just say that I know folks are interested in the details around PDG, VIP V5, and folks are doing work planning. So I'd imagine, again, by summer or fall, that there may be some more details to share.
Anything else for today? All right.
If I can just make one last announcement before we sign off, is that BBF is conducting our annual stakeholder survey. And so those of you, all of you who are on, should have received an email from SurveyMonkey. Please take 5 minutes to respond to that survey. It is super important to us to kind of know how you're showing up, where you are engaged in the BBF network, feedback on opportunities, etc. So if you search your email, it should have come from SurveyMonkey via Dora, who was on earlier. If you didn't get it, let me know and we can get you a link. So thank you for your input.
Well, thank you, everyone. And thank you, Johanna, for coming to present to us. And we will send out the June agenda. And I hope you all will attend and welcome Dawn to her first meeting. And say goodbye to Jen for her last meeting where she has lots of responsibilities. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Fingers crossed.